I'm going to now call the meeting to order. Thank you. The recording is now in progress. And I'm going to ask that we stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge
Pledge
allegiance
allegiance
to the
to the
flag
flag of the United States of America
and to the
and to
republic
the republic
for which it
for it
stands,
stands,
one
one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with
and with
liberty
liberty
and
and
justice
justice
for all.
Getting better.
I know. By next month, when we're all together again in person,
Yeah, we'll get it really screwed up then.
breeze. It should, yeah, no, it'll be a breeze. All right, I'm going to call the roll now. William Waltman,
Here.
Stuart Murray,
Here,
Zachary Burkett,
Here.
Kevin Lucero,
Here.
Mel Knight,
Here.
Tyson Parker.
Here.
And we're going to move on to the approval of the agenda, but I did want to introduce all of you to Charles Rennick. He is a partner with our law firm and of Randy Audio, and he will be assisting us this evening. So Charles.
Hello.
So now I would like to move on to approve the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
so moved.
Thank you. Okay, I have a motion and a second. William Waldman,
Aye.
Stuart Murray,
Aye.
Zach Burkett,
Aye.
Kevin Lucero,
Aye.
Mel Knight,
Aye.
Tyson Parker.
Aye.
Thank you very much. We're going to move on to section D, reports. Before we do that, I just want to take a moment to note the passing of Alan Ward Mingy. He, of course, was he did so much for the history of the Southwest. And there are extensive obituaries for him in the comment and also in the local papers. But what I wanted to say was he was absolutely instrumental in starting the Corrales Historical Society and in restoring the old church, as well as, of course, the Gutierrez Mingy home, which is Casa San Isidro and is now overseen by the Albuquerque Museum. But he just did everything to put the history and the nature of Corrales front and center. So I have reached out to both the Historical Society and Casa San Isidro, and we will be getting more information about what may be being done to honor this man. So I just wanted to recognize him here tonight before we move on. Let's first go to our administrator report from Mr. Curry.
Thank you, Mayor. First thing I will go to is ask Tanya to give us a positive COVID update if possible.
No, it's positive. Thank you, Mayor, Council, Administrator Curry, and everyone in the meeting. We did get 2 new cases over the weekend, but that's only 2 cases in 5 days. We've only had 4 in 10 days, so that's still really good news. Sandoval County's numbers are still hanging out about 11 a day to 13 a day, a little lower since I don't know what really happens on the weekend. We did get 36 cases over the weekend, but that's not a lot when you divide it by 3. We have a lot of vaccine going on, and that is wonderful. So no update today from the vaccine team. They said they were having technical difficulties, but as of yesterday at 8 in the morning, 72.8% of all Sandoval County citizens were partially vaccinated, with 62.1% being fully vaccinated either by 2 doses of an mRNA vaccine or 1 dose of a J&J. The state sits at 64.4% for 1 dose and 54.2% for the second dose. So we're definitely making progress and really, really happy to see that. Our vaccine sites in Corrales are kind of transitioning with the pool opening. We have a couple more Thursday mornings, but I'm transitioning and trying to work around soccer and pool parties and all the stuff that's going on there to get vaccine in and get enough volunteers to staff evenings and weekends, evenings for us. Right now, we have 408 Pfizer in our refrigerator and a 95 J&J. I'm going to have to order more because we're already booked for almost 600 Pfizer vaccines to go out. within the next 4 weeks. So that's really good news. I've partnered with Rio Arriba County and Sandoval County for tomorrow. We're trying to really hit these outlying areas where people don't have the chance to get vaccine. I'm going to Guyana tomorrow, and if no one knows where that's at, I'm not sure either. I know I have to go to Cuba and go 18 miles up, but it's going to be a great partnership. We started it about 2 weeks ago, and they don't have the ability to get kids vaccinated up there because right now they're only carrying Moderna in those areas. So really excited. Everything we can do to get us to that 60% helps all of us. Other good news, messenger RNA seems to be working really good against all the variants, including the Indian variant, B1.61712 2 and 3, it looks like. So we're doing really good. Super busy with everything, fire season, flooding, we're still planning for everything else that could happen. And thanks to Chief Martinez for giving me some leeway to do other work and then catch up, on weekends and evenings. And I appreciate all of you, and I'll be happy to stand for questions. We've got a lot of kids vaccinated too, by the way. A lot of kids have been coming through.
That's terrific. Are there any questions from counselors for Commander Latin? Well, thank you as always for everything you're doing. I know that we're doing really well as a community, and a lot of that has to do with your persistent, relentless efforts, as well as, of course, the great intelligence of our community. But thank you, Commander Latin. We all owe you one. Ron?
Okay. Next, I'd like to turn it over to Aaron to talk about the property that was ours once and has disappeared now.
Yeah, thank you, Ron. As many of you know, Council and Mayor, we had a trailer that was dumped along the ditch on Saturday. Well, not this past Saturday, but the Saturday before that. We did a lot of sitting on it, just kind of waiting to see if the property owner was going to deal with it. When they did not, our fire chief was ready and to spring. He got everything coordinated, the bins, the trailer, the tractor to demo the trailer, the staff, the crew. And so we're happy to report that it's now gone, and we'll be moving forward with some other items related to it, but we're going to try and hopefully not have that happen again. But it was an interesting problem to have, but it's been fixed at this point.
One of the interesting things that kind of drove our decision was that it's very difficult, apparently, to get something like this hauled off intact, if you want to call it intact what you saw there. But so we made the decision just to get it out of there, and I want to thank everybody that was involved in getting it done. I had the opportunity to talk to Mike Hammond at the MRG, the Conservancy District, and he was very supportive of any action that we took, simply because it was also partially on their property. Next thing I'd like to bring up is ask Lynn. I think he's on the line here to talk about, he's getting ready to open the pool up in the first week of June, but opening the pool this year is a little more challenging than ever, because the demand for lifeguards is great and heavy, both in our village and in Rio Rancho and Albuquerque. So Lynn, if you could talk about that.
Yeah, so I have no problem, but thank you guys. So this year has been a difficult year because last year we were not allowed to teach any American Red Cross classes, only just because of the COVID. We couldn't have anyone together. So this year, me and some of the other pools kind of figured out how we were going to teach them. And so we're in the process of doing that. But like tonight itself, just alone, 3 of them backed out that I was planning to hire. And, but it's lucky for me, I'm working the state wrestling tournament tomorrow, Thursday, and Saturday. So, I can more. And then next weekend, this coming weekend, I'll be at the pool all day, Sunday and Monday, doing the training with all the guards. So, I truly believe we can make this work. I did I did intentionally hire more guards this year because I knew I was going to have to do this training. And if they can't pass, then I needed to find others. So, but I mean, really, Ron was right with the Bernalillo County and City of Rio Rancho. City of Rio Rancho said, can I please pass out stuff all weekend at the state wrestling tournament? Because they're 40 short. So, I mean, I really know that we are in a better situation. I'll make it work. And people are just excited for this summer and just to have the pool open. And pool parties have all filled up for the whole entire, so that only took like a week and a half to happen. Swim lessons are looking pretty full too, but we did offer those last year, but this year is more at a normal scale. And in the pool, we'll just have 150 people until we get 6% vaccinated and go to the 200. So we're going to make it work. It's going to be a great summer. I'm just glad I have kids that are in the schools that I can kind of pull off of them to help me get the guards. But this is something that soon is going to change because both my kids will be in college soon. So, but other than that, any questions I'm here for.
Have any questions? Yes, Counselor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. Lynn, in your free time, how's the design for the new addition coming along?
So the new addition actually will be, that's going to be talked about at the next Parks and Rec Commission meeting, which will be next week. I'll have more, me and Ron are meeting with Facility Build Tuesday, and then the Parks and Rec Commission meeting will be on Thursday, and we'll have more then. And they're really giving us the pricing on what we're looking at. So we will have that hopefully really, really, really soon. So, but that's something we're going to keep working on all summer. So we'll have that ready when it's ready to go. And you guys, hopefully I'll show you guys soon. So.
Thank you, Lynn. Any other questions? I think Lynn's being modest. Actually, the guards really love to come and work for Lynn. So he's actually in better shape than the larger municipalities around us. And so I'm sure we will get the full complement. And thank you, Lynn.
Thanks, Lynn.
No, thank you. We will, for sure we will.
Thanks, Lynn. Next, I'd like to go to Michael to talk about a very successful cleanup day that we just had.
Well, Mayor, Councilors, Administrator Curry, we typically do between 80 and 90 loads or pickup or residents. We actually did 196 last Saturday. We had 12 30-yard dumpsters of waste, 3 40-yard dumpsters of green waste, and a whole bunch of metal that we're still recycling. But all in all, it was a real good day.
That's great.
And you find it amazing what people decide to leave behind.
Oh yeah, they throw some pretty good stuff.
Any questions for Michael? All right, thank you. I'm really glad it was such a success.
Okay, next thing I'd like to bring up is something that's we've been talking about for the months, and that we'll be getting together. When I say we, I mean myself and Raina and others, Aaron, and sitting and talking with Jill Sweeney and our financial team, getting their advice that we can give to the council, share with the council on how we look at the $1 million+ in Santa Fe. And I know there's lots of people who have lots of thoughts and they see that as lots of opportunities up there, as do we. But I thought what it would be helpful to the council is for us to listen to some of our professionals and then kind of lay out some of their advice for you to consider. So we'll be pulling that together in the very near term, before the next council meeting, where we'll be able to share some of their thoughts with you, so you can plug those in with the thoughts that you have on the money and how we want to approach it. I know that our approach so far has been to look at those monies up there from a very conservative point of view, and seeing what we can spend and what we need to keep behind for reserves or for the proverbial rainy day. The other thing that is important that you'll need to be considering soon, I know in conjunction with some of the things I just talked about financial planning, is you'll need to be considering, we'll be bringing up some considerations, as I think individual counselors might be doing, as to whether the council wants to get back into the business of purchasing property. You know, we had a presentation during the course of the budget hearings, and if the council decides in your wisdom that you want to get in the business of purchasing property and direct administration to start taking the necessary steps to get appraisals, to look at various properties and things like that, then we're certainly willing to stand by and do that. But the decision as to whether the council wants to get into that business is yours. And so that'll be coming at you in one form or another in the near future. The last thing that I wanted to mention was Corrales Road, and we have information that is coming in all the time. We've got some notifications over the weekend and yesterday that the road rebuild would start on the repave would start on Wednesday the 2nd. And now we've also got notified that we've been invited 12-person maximum, and plus it might be on the Zoom on June 3rd. There's going to be a live in-person meeting at the State Highway Department off the freeway, but they're limited to 12 people. So that's going to be with the contractors and with the state. And so this is a situation that seems to be changing. Optimistically, they think they could complete the road work within a month or 25 working days. But there will just be more information that's coming. And what I'd like to do before I go into my last item is just to ask Michael if he's got any other information that he would like to add, because he's had a lot of direct contact with the paving company and the procedures they're going to be using. And so our goal is to keep you informed as to everything that we know as we know it. But the thing that has become very apparent to us, we've made our position clear to the highway department that we were concerned about the businesses along Corrales Road after COVID. And so now, as they've come in here and made these kind of unilateral decisions to start, I know many of you have received concerns or questions from your constituents, as has the mayor and others. But we just want to get the information out to you as we can. And the state is going to do this, and we are just encouraging them to do it in the most efficient way as possible. And of course, our folks, whether it's the fire department or the police department, will be working closely as far as traffic control and alerting everyone as to what they need to do along the way. So Michael, if you want to add anything else before we take some questions on Corrales Road before the last item that I have.
Well, Mayor, councilors, Ron, I've been meeting with the contractors themselves. We actually went for a drive to Corrales. They are looking for places to stage their equipment. We discussed the process, and what they're going to do is go in and mill 2 inches and dispose of it. Then they'll go in and scarify another 2 inches and relay that with another inch of new on top. They'll be working 1 lane at a time. According to them, they could get a mile, maybe more in a day, but they weren't sure if DOT was going to hold them to a 9 a.m. start time and a 3 p.m. get off the road time. But then I haven't been in touch with DOT about this. I'm more the contractors, but I'll give you information as soon as I get it.
Michael,
Uh-huh.
the contractor will actually be responsible for the traffic plan. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then I guess, are they going to start at the south end?
That's my understanding.
Okay, thank you. Do we have other questions for Michael as to the sketchy details that we have so far? Counselor Murray?
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. So Michael, when they dispose of this milling that they're going to do, are they going to take it out of the village? They're not going to dump it here in the village, are they?
Gonna go somewhere by Balloon Fiesta Park.
Good place.
Sounds good.
Another thing on the road that
I'll get to you, Counselor Woolman.
another thing on the road that I think is important, and I know has had a lot of interest, is that Michael and I went through the inventory of crosswalks yesterday up and down the road, and Michael will be getting together with the appropriate person at the highway department to talk about crosswalks, whether they're for humans or whether they're equestrian crosswalks. They've asked us to consolidate and eliminate some of the crosswalks. He and I have gone through there and made our decisions as to what would be appropriate for the village that we can recommend to the state. And because it's obviously we need to have those crosswalks put in as soon as the road gets repaved for safety reasons and other things. So Michael, I don't know if you want to add to that as well.
Well, there's a couple that we need to get rid of. We have the one in East Ella and then the one on West Ella. The West Ella one, I don't think I've ever seen it being used, so we can lose that one. And a couple of others that end up, they kind of come off of a middle of a person's property across the road into the center of someone else's property in a wall. So that one's not really doing any good. But I'll get with Margaret from DOT and we'll get that straightened out.
Thank you. I saw a question from Counselor Woolman, and then I'll come back to Counselor Murray.
Okay.
Counselor Woolman?
Actually, it's a request, Ron, if there is a way that this meeting could be on Zoom, I think it'd be helpful for the council and for the citizens. So just a request.
Counselor, they've tentatively set it up in person and also on, but I've seen a link on there that they have a Teams meeting link, which is different than Zoom. But I'll confirm that if we can get that set up, because that was our initial request, is that we wanted to have as many people available to hear the information and perhaps provide input. I will say that part of this invitation was very specific as to how they've got two different POs that they've included in the invitation that will be paying for the road, and they're going to take input. They're going to hear us, but I want to make sure that everybody knows that they're a little bit of a steamroller, and we have to be cautious as to where we want to play there. And so far, we're playing on the crosswalks, but we certainly want to get as much input as we can to the state.
I'm curious about the cost. When we had our meeting with DOT, they gave us a budget that they were going to use of 1.8 million, which
Pretty close. It's pretty close to that. The two POs listed in the invite were, I think, around $900,000 a piece.
Okay, it seems a little low, but we'll see how far they can get.
Yeah, hopefully they won't stop mid-Corrales.
Right.
Counselor Murray, did you have a question?
Well, yeah, one more thing. Ron, I had sent you a tentative budget about the flashing lights, and this seems like an opportune time if we could work this into the budget somehow, but identify those areas that Bonnie Bagley and Janet Blair and some other people have identified that maybe we can get these flashing lights installed at the same time or around that same time.
I completely agree, Counselor, and I can assure you that the state knows we're highly interested in this road and crosswalks and everything else at this point. If there's no other questions on Corrales Road, then the last thing I have on my list is that I had the opportunity to have just a very casual meeting with the new members of the tree committee, and we're continuing. Before we have our first formal meeting, we'll be gathering information. I'm going to be the liaison from the village to worked with the tree committee to get them off the ground. And it was very productive. And at this point, we're just trying to gather some information so that we can build a little infrastructure for the committee itself. So if there's any other questions, Mayor, I'll be glad to try to answer them.
Yes, we are.
All right. Any other questions about either the administrator's report or the department or boards and commission reports from any of the counselors at this time? Yes, Counselor Waldman.
Just very quickly, Ron, any word from Santa Fe about the federal money being divided up?
Yeah, we got some goodies in this afternoon that were initiated in Senator Lujan's office, I believe. And so we're kind of ciphering through that at this point.
I would have to say it's not entirely clear at this moment. We're
Right.
still waiting for an actual tranche, of money, but we are getting a lot of what would you call policies and, ways to apply for this money. So we'll see what happens.
Good.
Any other questions before we move on to the counselors forum? All right, thank you very much, Administrator Curry. The counselors forum, we're going to move on to that. It's for information purposes only, not for discussion and debate, to inform the governing body of an issue or concern that would not be addressed on the agenda during the business session. Do I have a counselor who would like to speak? Counselor Waldman.
Yes, I had a conversation earlier today with a former colleague from Senator Udall's office, now working for Congresswoman Lecher Fernandez, who will be in Corrales on Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock at La Entrada Park for a meet and greet and to say hello to everyone. So it's an open invitation under the trees on a hot afternoon. So everyone's welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Counselor Murray, did I see your hand up?
You did. Thank you, Mayor. So just a couple items. I noticed that the short-term rentals still continue on more or less for the houses, for at least not for the accessory buildings, but maybe we need to be thinking about doing something like Santa Fe does and maybe setting a limit on those things. Also, and this would be a question for Mr. Rennick, but on Zoom meetings, there's a way through the chat room to submit questions either individually or with a group. Is that considered ex parte as it pertains to maybe the P&Z and our council meetings?
Councilor Murray, I did not fully get that question.
Okay, when you're on Zoom, there is the ability to chat while the meeting is going on. Is any communications through the chat room considered ex parte in lieu of like commissions like the planning, zoning, and or the council?
Okay, I think I see what you're asking, that the chat function allows people to chat apart from what's going on the screen right now. And I think you're saying, would that be not so much ex parte as perhaps an open meetings problem?
Yes.
Would that be right?
Yes.
And that's actually something that has not come up before and had not given any thought to. I know that the chat is sometimes includes everybody that's on the call, and sometimes it's restricted. If it were restricted and it was restricted to a quorum of the council, then it could very well be an open meetings problem. If it's got everybody who's on the call, which includes the public and the media and anybody else, then I would say it probably is not.
Okay. Yeah, I'm thinking, when we do go live and maybe continuing have the Zoom as an ability for the public to weigh in on these meetings. It's convenient for them to do that from their house rather than maybe show up in person. But I just wanted some clarification to see where that would go.
Oh, so you're saying if it's a member of the public, not a member of the council?
Well, I mean, it could go both ways. I mean, it could go between public and council or somebody, if it were just one-on-one. But anyway, I don't know if that's ever been broached, as a conversation or not.
Not that I'm aware of, but I will give it some thought and talk to Randy a little bit about it just to be sure.
Okay, thank you.
And also, I know that we are going to be looking at something, we're probably going to be going to YouTube when we go back to in-person meetings as a way for the public to participate. And we will be looking at that function and see if we need to make some rules regarding participation between a counselor and a member of the public during the meeting. Anyway, we'll work on it. Thank you for bringing it up, Counselor Murray. Counselor Knight.
Thank you, Mayor.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I was going to ask Lori, where are we with the casitas or the short-term rentals as far as P and Z? Has that been, I know it's being addressed. How far along are we with that?
For the short-term rentals, Counselor?
Correct.
So right now, as you know, there's a moratorium on our office accepting any short-term rental applications that involve an accessory structure. So we're not accepting those. What we're doing right now and started doing right prior to the moratorium actually was contacting those folks who are already operating short-term rentals in the village. And so those who are operating them out of a house, typically their house, we're allowed to move forward with those. So we're doing so. We're just not doing anything with the ones that are in a casita or other accessory building because of the moratorium.
Thank you. And Counselor Knight, I'd just like to remind you that this is only for information purposes and not for discussion and debate. So do you have any other items you'd like to raise just to let us know where you stand on an issue?
Well, I just, my big thing, I brought it up last time, was that money for that $4 million I had asked during the 2 weeks we were waiting for this next meeting about the interest on that money. And then I guess we will look at that in June as far as maybe, asking other council members their feelings about purchasing property with that.
Thank you. Thank you, Counselor Knight. Are any other counselors wish to speak at the counselors forum? All right, thank you very much. We're going to move on to the Coriolanus forum. I'm going to ask our clerk, do we have anyone signed up for the Coriolanus forum this evening?
Madam Mayor, I didn't have anyone sign up today.
All right, thank you very much. Then we will move on to our consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the Village Council and be enacted by one motion. There will not be separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. The two items here are the minutes for the May 11th regular meeting and the May 17th special council meeting. Do I have a motion regarding the consent agenda?
So moved.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on either item? I guess we don't need to do that, so I'm going to do a roll call. Hearing none, that William Waldman,
Aye.
Stuart Murray,
Aye.
Zachary Burkett,
Aye.
Kevin Lucero,
Aye.
Mel Knight,
Aye.
Tyson Parker.
Aye.
Thank you very much. All right, we're going to move into old business. The first item is discussion of possible amendments to proposed ordinance 2104. This is an ordinance amending definitions in chapter 18. And we did have a first reading last meeting, and that it would really have been a spot for real substantive amendments, but it was determined that this would be the best practice to allow discussion of further amendments. If we have them, we are going to need to work through them, get a consensus, and then if possible, add them into item number 2 so that this can be published and posted. I'm going to ask Lori to maybe just say a few things before we throw it open to counselors for your thoughts.
Thank you, Mayor, counselors. One thing I wanted to address from the last meeting is I do recognize that there could be instances where a conditional use application for the Planning and Zoning Commission might be called for, such as a second kitchen for a family member as part of a residential addition, or one of the counselors had mentioned a shower in a pool house. And that would be, again, could be a conditional use application. There might be some instances out there where a strict reading of what I've suggested might hamper the ability to do something that would be otherwise okay. And the conditional use application process would take care of that. Also, I guess I want to reiterate that these changes will make the Planning and Zoning Department's job so much easier. When this moratorium expires in July, the Planning and Zoning offices will be compelled to approve any structure as long as no oven is present. And some folks do await that happy day, let me tell you. Right now, only the presence of an oven differentiates between, a house and not a house. And I still, again, I firmly believe that both our comprehensive plan and our ordinance is based on that plan. We said we wanted to be a rural village with one dwelling unit per lot. And unless that changes, that's what we should be. And that's really all I have to say, unless you have any questions.
Are there questions for Ms. Stout? Yes, Counselor Parker and then Counselor Lucero.
Mayor Rote, councilors, I recall, I don't know exactly what I asked. We could look it up in the minutes, but when I stepped in to that first meeting and we were voting on this moratorium, I specifically asked, are we going to be looking for ways for people to accomplish these kind of needs, or are we going to just say no to everything? And it seems like we're just finding ways to say no, and little to no thought has been put into how to make this work for people who want to have an accessory structure where a family member lives out in the back of the kitchen. But just maybe a bedroom, a bathroom with a bathtub or a shower, or an office that also has those items in there. And that this just seems like a huge missed opportunity where we could incentivize things that if you do want to do this, then you must switch over to an advanced treatment system. And at the end of the day, when their project is done, they will be doing less harm than a house that just has a standard system with no casita out back. And so I think everyone has demonized these casitas with this, oh my gosh, there's more people living here. There's more effluent going into the ground. And I think everyone needs to realize that a single family residence on a 1 acre lot is doing damage to our water table, whether we like it or not. And so the solution should not be just not making it worse. The solution should be make it better. And so I don't know why we're not seeing anything in there that speaks to any of those. And so I will say I'm frustrated, and I felt somewhat deceived when I asked that question before I made my vote that yes, we would be looking at that. And I see nothing that shows that any of that discussion has happened. That's all.
We have any other questions for Ms. Stout? Yes, Counselor Lucero.
I'm not quite sure if this question is to Ms. Stout or Mr. Rennick. First of all, I want to thank Ms. Stout and Ms. Mader and everybody else who worked on these issues and these ordinances. I know it's a lot of work. I know it's a big bite to take. So I appreciate all the hard work. And Mr. Rennick, I think this question would be posed to you, and I'm not quite sure if you've read the proposed ordinance or otherwise. But what I'm asking is just your take on to make sure that you're satisfied with the language in these proposed ordinances as far as it pertains to casitas in auxiliary buildings and the like, to argue any possible or any past loophole that we may have that may come up. I just like to get your take on the language in there, and like I said, I've had extensive conversations with Ms. Administrator Stout to where I'm confident. I just want to hear your take on it. Thank you.
Are you asking whether historically the things that have been wrong can be discussed in the context of what needs to be fixed?
I think what I'm asking is the language suitable or adequate to argue or close any loophole that may have come up in the past when it comes to these types of structures. You know, the 1 acre, one dwelling, or one lot, one dwelling issue. Do you believe that the language is suitable to argue it later on when these issues come up?
I wish I could answer that, but I'm not familiar with the language. That is something that if Lori will point out to me specifically what it is, I can review it and see if that would cover that situation. If not, you wanted to amend it to cover it.
I'm not looking to amend anything right now. I mean, I'm just trying to get your take on what the language that's in the ordinance as it's being rewritten. Is it suitable? And maybe, and I'm sorry, I know you're filling in here. But I'm just wanted to get that question asked, and I wanted to get an answer. Like I said, I have had conversations with Ms. Stout, and I'm very confident. But from a legal point of view, I was just wondering if you had a chance to look at it, and if you think that language is suitable or adequate.
It's a question I'd be glad to answer and glad to review it. I'm sorry, I just have not had the opportunity to do so. I'll get with Lori and see what it is. And then either I or Randy at the next meeting, of the third hearing on this, will be able to address that.
Okay.
I would like to say that I know our attorneys have reviewed these changes. Mr. Rennick did not have the opportunity to be at that meeting, but Randy Audio and Patrick Trujillo were both there. Councilor Murray?
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. There is one item I would like to kind of take a look at, folks. When it has to do with the definition of kitchen, and we've been struggling with this, back and forth about appliances and utilities and so forth. Maybe the better approach to this is to do what is in the 2015 International Residential Building Code and their definition of a kitchen. And that basically is to take the first sentence that Lori has created and just terminate it after the phrase preparation of food, and therefore eliminate appliances, eliminate technology that might come along later. Any place that's used for preparation of food basically is a kitchen, and that's what's in the International Residential Building Code. So I'd like to propose an amendment, Mayor, if you mind. I would like to amend the definition of kitchen to mean any room used, intended, or designed to be used for cooking or the preparation of food, period, and strike everything else afterward.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And why don't I ask Ms. Stout if she has any particular thoughts about that definition, and then I'll see if there's sort of we can't make a decision for this item, but I could get a consensus as to whether your fellow counselors agree with basically, I think you're saying, sort of simplify it and just make it consistent with the IBF. Lori?
Mayor, counselors, I think that's not a bad idea. I think that's a good idea, because I believe that, the idea of an oven would still be eliminated anyway, because that then assumes it's a room where you make food. So I think that amendment would work just fine. We'd be able to uphold that in our office.
And I'm just going to look around and see if any other counselors have, yes, Counselor Waldman. You're on mute, Counselor Waldman.
I'm sorry. I'm just wondering if this would be in concert with the state definitions. I like the idea of ending it there, but would there be any conflict with what the state says about this?
I'm not sure. We can be more strict than the state if we wish, but I can't answer that question. I looked at other municipalities actually, and then I realized that every municipality I was looking at had municipal water and sewer, and I was sort of comparing apples and oranges.
I would think maybe, Counselor Waldman, that since it is consistent with the International Building codes. It probably does not conflict with state law, but
Mayor, if I may, the state uses the 2015 International Building Code. So it would, I think it would be consistent with what the state is already proposing or has in place.
okay. Any other comments about this proposed amendment from any of the other counselors? Yes, Counselor Parker.
Counselor, you're muted.
That was such a brilliant introduction. I apologize you didn't get to hear that. I think that we all need to be very careful with the language that we use for these ordinances, because a lot of times there is an unknown consequence to what we are doing. And so I think taking something and proposing it and not having any in-depth discussion or investigation into that outside of a conversation is a potential for problems to be had on there. I think just an example is we have a definition of a dwelling unit on there, and it says nothing about bathrooms, but then we can't have a bathroom in the other one because it's a dwelling unit. And so there's a circular logic that needs to be refined in items like this. And so I caution all of you before jumping on the bandwagon on this to really think about the unintended consequences of things that are not going to be allowed now, that very well, would be totally appropriate for it just because of some wordsmithing that's happening now. So that's it.
Thank you. Lori, I do believe that you worked with Maida Rubin from the COG on all this language that's being proposed,
Yes. Yes.
and she is a professional planner.
Yes, the issue here in Corrales was we were ending up with multiple dwelling units on a lot, which we really can't sustain here. And we don't want that here according to our comprehensive plan. So.
Yes, Counselor Burkett.
I just want to make sure that I'm clear on this. Right now, all we're discussing is the actual definition of a casita or an ancillary living structure. Then we're not changing any policy as far as what we do with those things. We're just cleaning up the description. And as we get further along in the Chapter 18 review, we will have the ability to address some of the things that Counselor Parker is talking about, as far as maybe instead of just saying no to everything, say yes to some things, but do so in a way to where they're actually better than saying no to what seems initially like a bigger problem, but in the end will actually create a bigger solution. Is that correct? All we're changing right now is the definition of a casita?
Well, we're clarifying the definition of what's a dwelling unit and what's an accessory structure. And like I said at the beginning of my remarks, I do recognize that there could be some other potential uses that could then have a conditional use application before Planning and Zoning Commission, such as the second kitchen, or I believe it was you, Counselor, that might have mentioned the shower in a pool house, which is a reasonable request. And that could be something that could go before P&Z and say, here's what I want to do. I'm not trying to make another house. I'd like to have a shower in my pool house. And that would be, a reasonable request.
I'd also like to address one thing because I think that's correct. I also want to say that policy, as a general matter, we were working on, as you point out, clarification and statutory cleanup in Chapter 18. Our policies, as put forth in our comprehensive plan, that probably any changes or any real deep dive probably will be the next step if we launch into doing a comprehensive plan and really have a lot of public input on how people see our community, and if they want to make any changes from what's really been a traditional emphasis on one dwelling per lot. So I don't believe the intention here at all was to change policy, Counselor Burkett. Any more discussion on item 1? All right, I'm going to move then into item 2, which is consideration, action, and approval of resolution 2112, a resolution directing publication and notice of intent to adopt an ordinance amending definitions in Chapter 18, ordinance 2104. I'm going to ask whether or not whether we should going to ask Mr. Rennick if what I should do now is take a motion and see if there's enough support to amend the definition of a kitchen and then include that in the larger motion to approve.
Excuse me, but were you going to allow any public input into this?
I'm so sorry, Mr. Hufflora. At this time, this is a discussion among the elected representatives. Thank you. Mr. Rennick?
Mayor, this is something that Randy and I discussed before he left. And his opinion was that at this time, this meeting, you simply vote on the resolution to publish, and then the amendment would be made at the next meeting prior to adoption of the ordinance.
All right.
The question would be at that time, whether it's a significant amendment or not. As you just pointed out, you're not intending to change policy. You're trying to figure out how to implement that policy. A simple definitional change may not be considered a significant amendment, and it could go forward. But if you say, we're going to have open it up no matter how many dwelling units per acre, that would be a significant change. So
All right.
just vote on the resolution tonight.
All right. All right. But we will definitely have that as a amendment in the next meeting for the fine. Is that acceptable, Councilor Murray? All right.
Yeah.
So at this point, I'm going to ask if there is a motion to approve Resolution 2112, directing publication of the notice of intent to adopt an ordinance amending definitions in Chapter 18. Do I have
So
such
moved.
a motion? Thank you, Councilor Murray. Do I have a second? Yes, I have a second. Thank you. I'm going to take a voice vote on this.
Madam
William-
Mayor, just
Yes.
before you start, if we could make a friendly amendment, obviously, the ordinance number referenced in this resolution should be 2104 rather than 2103. I think that's a pretty minor clerical amendment that I would hope be included as we change it.
All right, with that amendment, making sure that 2104 is put on the actual title of the resolution itself. I have a motion. I have a second discussion. Councilor Parker?
Counselor, you're muted.
It's a sign I should stop talking. Mayor, councilors, the motion that's on the floor right now is just to publish the language that was changed in the ordinance, and at the following meeting is when the vote to adopt that ordinance would happen, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
And that is also the meeting at which the amendment as offered by Councilor Murray, for instance, as to the definition of the kitchen would be taken up. Does that clarify it for you? Okay. Any further discussion before I continue to take the vote? All right, I'm going to start then. Councilor Waldman,
Aye.
Councilor Murray,
Aye.
Councilor Burkett,
Aye.
Councilor Lucero,
Aye.
Councilor Knight,
Aye.
Councilor Parker.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate all the effort that has been going into this. All right, we're going to move into number 3, which is consideration, action, and approval of Resolution 2113. This is a resolution approving the adoption of amended procurement policy manual, and I'm assuming that all of you have memorized this manual. I don't know if, Raina, did you want to speak to the manual itself, the contents?
I don't. This is the manual that we brought a couple months ago, and
Right.
Nothing was changed from that point except for a few clerical issues. And so it's just ready to be approved.
Thank you. I think I'd like to just do a shout out to Raina. She spent a great deal of time. I think it's a quality product. So do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Is there any further discussion before I take the vote? All right, seeing none. Councilor Waldman,
Aye.
Councilor Murray,
Aye.
Councilor Burkett,
Aye.
Councilor Lucero,
Aye.
Counselor Knight,
Aye.
Counselor Parker.
Aye.
All right, thank you, everyone. We're now going to move into new business tonight. The first item is a hearing of wholesale liquor license application for Tuna Boat Charters LLC, doing business as One World Spirits at 4908 Corrales Road, Corrales, New Mexico, 87048. This is an application. Is the applicant here with us tonight?
Fritz, you'll need to press *6 on your phone in order to unmute.
Well, that's helpful advice. Thank you. I'm now unmuted.
Terrific. If you'd just like to give us just a very short overview, Fritz, of what your application is for.
Yes, ma'am. Our application is a license to allow the spirits that we have been using on our property in the restaurant and bottling, and be able to bring them to wholesale, be a wholesaler and be able to bring them to other stores that allow us to sell to basically Frontier Mart or another Jubilee liquor store. Whoever can sell legal liquor legally in New Mexico can then become a customer of ours. So it basically just lets us sell our product is what the request for that license does.
Thank you. And I'm just going to ask, I saw the certification from Ms. Stout. I think your application is there any reason this application isn't complete from the village's point of view?
Well, I would not answer that. Certain somebody in the village would. I assume that question wasn't for me.
That's okay. I'm just going to ask Ms. Stout to confirm the status of your application.
So Mayor, councilors, from a zoning standpoint only, which is the only way I look at it, was this is an establishment that produces and sells liquor. They've already been approved for that use. It would not require another site development plan to become a wholesaler of spirits. It doesn't require additional parking. He's not adding on to the building. So from that standpoint only, there was nothing standing in the way of him doing what he'd like to do. There may be other considerations I'm unaware of.
Thank you. I think actually the Chief Martinez, did you have something?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Yeah, I'm currently working with Mr. Allen. We've been inspecting his facility. There may have been something that had fallen through the cracks as far as a fire inspection for the distillery. So I'd like to work with Mr. Allen so he can become full compliant, so he can operate his still safely.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
We don't have a current fire inspection.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or questions for the applicant from any of the counselors? Counselor Murray and then
Thank you,
Counselor Knight.
Mayor, counselors. Mr. Fritz, I was just wondering, how much spirits are you looking at to produce and sell? Is there a limit on how much you can brew?
Well, honestly, sir, the limits that we're achieving are mandatory minimums. And so we will likely remain a small producer. I don't see any plans to go any far beyond trying to meet those mandatory minimums, which actually have been set by the state and actually just are coming down also because the minimums were a little high. So that's what we'll be working to do. And we don't have plans to take over New Mexico. We have plans just to keep our license intact.
And when you say spirits, we're talking about hard alcohol, 40 proof or so forth?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course.
Counselor Knight.
Yeah. Hi, Fritz. Will you be
Hi, Mel.
selling that out of your building or just wholesaling it to other places?
Well, we actually have been selling it out of our building for most of the year, if not more than this year, of course. So yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Counselor Parker and then Counselor Lucero.
Mayor Rowe, councilors, Fritz, so with your craft brewery and distillery license, are you also going to be selling other New Mexico craft distillery spirits and beer, or just your own?
We certainly could do that. We have, of course, relied on outside sources for our beer products, mainly because when we got our brewer's license, we didn't have a waterway system, and having a full-fledged brewery was really not an option at that time in that year. We could handle other spirits from other locations, and we may entertain that, but it's and I honestly hope that we would be able to support some of the other places that have some different product lines. I wouldn't count it out. It's not part of our main business plan, though.
Councilor Lucero, you had a question?
The question is for Chief Martinez. How close are we to getting totally completed in compliance with this establishment?
Mayor, Councilor Lucero, as quick as Fritz can work on some of the issues that were addressed today. So we just have, some compliance issues.
Okay.
And Fritz could probably answer that better as far as, time frame.
Would you like to answer that, Fritz, for us?
Oh, sure. I'd be glad to. In terms of compliance issues, I am aware of concerns. I am not aware of any specific compliance issues. As far as I know, we have appropriate safety measures in place. And I'm waiting to find out what exactly we need to do to make things safe. But honestly, in the end, in terms of safety, there's not a time when a fire marshal can come to any place and request changes. So that's the world we live in, and that's the world I would expect.
I guess I'm going to throw it back to you, Chief Martinez. Are you looking to do an inspection of the distillery facility? Is that what you're hoping to achieve?
Mayor, Council, yes, we have, as you know, we've been trying to hit every business in Corrales to make it safer. We have inspected the bistro, but the distillery was not part of the initial fire inspection. So it was brought to our attention recently that, he's in full operation. And so we were just trying to get our eyes on his operation and just make sure that all the appropriate authorities have inspected the state, and then of course the fire department.
Thank you, sir. It would seem as if there's probably absolutely no issue with granting you your license, but it would be good if it could be also part of a compliance, an ability for the fire department to just come and do an inspection of your distillery. Is there any reason that wouldn't be possible?
Well, actually, yesterday, John Pata and I forget the other gentleman's name, I should know it, did come by and do an inspection. So they did come by and do an inspection. They're in the midst of their review right now. I haven't heard back from them. So that's where we are. But of course.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If there are no further comments, I would take a motion to approve the liquor license application. I would also like to urge that the inspection for safety be completed. I think that's important. Councilor Murray?
So could we make it conditional then, the approval based on the complete fire inspection by Chief Martinez?
I think that would be okay. I don't see why not. So I would have that motion that we would approve the application. Yes, perhaps not.
Yeah.
I just have a quick question. Are we approving?
I was actually looking at our attorney here. He had his hand up. So no, we'll get back. Yes.
Madam Mayor, and I apologize, I've not discussed this with you or with Ron before now, but it appears to me that this is a public hearing, and therefore you would need to see if there are comments from members of the public.
Absolutely correct. I will do that before I proceed. I would like to get Councilor Burkett's input before we move to any members of the public who wish to speak.
I just want to clarify on this one, what we're approving. To me, it seems we're approving his ability to wholesale the stuff that he is already making, that his ability to make those, I assume, has already been approved. So the actual wholesaling component of this, I don't know that it needs to be conditional on an inspection. It seems like the distilling piece of it, which I assume has already been approved, that is the part that would be actually suspect or subject to the inspection for fire code stuff. Is that accurate?
Well, I think you still have an outstanding issue that this might be an opportunity to get that issue resolved.
Okay.
I mean, I understand exactly what you're saying, but so let me move on and ask if there are members of the public who would like to speak. And Aaron, you're probably going to have to help me with this. Do we see any hands up or anybody pushing buttons?
I don't believe so, Madam
right.
Mayor. Just Mr. Rennick.
All right, Mr. Rennick.
I would like to ask the applicant a question, but I'll wait until any public questions have been asked, if there are any.
It sounds like at this time there are not, but so would you like to ask your question, Mr. Rennick?
Yes, and I'm sorry, I don't know the gentleman's name. It just
His
shows
name
up
is
here.
Fritz Allen.
What is it?
Fritz Allen.
Allen?
Mhm.
Okay. Mr. Allen, this is Charles Rennick. I'm serving as the attorney for the village council. And to just clarify something, I think that Councilor Burkett just touched on it. This is an application only for a wholesaler license. Is that correct?
That is correct.
What licenses do you currently have?
Currently, we have a restaurant called a license called a restaurant license, which is commonly known as a beer and wine license. We have partnered with that a license called a craft brewer's license or small brewer's license. And we also have a license called a craft distiller's license. And those are the three licenses that we have at the facility.
Okay, then let me ask you this, if I could. The statutes provide, as you well know, for both a small brewer's license and a craft distiller's license. And in this respect, they're much alike. One of the provisions is that the license authorizes the licensee, and here's the small brewer's language, to sell only beer that is packaged by or for the licensee to a person holding a wholesaler's license or a small brewer's license. Is that what the intention here is, to get the wholesaler's license so that it can be sold from the small brewer's license to the wholesaler and then to the outside?
Yes, I understand your question, I believe, sir. And as it is, the state has separate licenses set up for spirits, wholesalers licenses for craft spirits producers. They have a special license set up for craft brewers license. They have a special license set up for craft wine license. They have some licenses that combine those particular elements. Each license is different and has a different price, a value associated with it for the application and for the license ownership for the year. And our license is specifically focusing on craft spirits only.
What is it that you could do with the wholesaler's license that you cannot do with the craft license?
What it allows us to do is it allows us to take the bottled product, which normally we're allowed to serve and sell from our restaurant location. It allows us to approach other establishments that have licenses to sell spirits and allow us to sell our spirits to those particular firms. That's what this license allows us to do.
Okay, and that's what I was thinking it was, and I appreciate that explanation. I'm satisfied, Mayor, if the council's clear on it.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Rennick. Any more questions? Yes, Councilor Knight.
No, I was just going to move to approve the license of
Okay.
Tuna Boat Charters.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Counselor Waldman has offered a second. I'm going to take a voice vote at this time.
Mayor excuse me, Mayor.
That's okay.
What was, are we gonna add the condition that he gets in compliance with our fire department?
I would like to, it may be mixing apples with oranges a little bit, but I would really like to urge, I'm gonna seek maybe our council's sage advice here on how we can, because the goal here is really to have compliance, to have a current fire inspection on that distillery. And I don't think it should be a big deal, but it's been a couple of years, so I think we could use this opportunity. We just need to do it legally. So Mr. Rennick, how should we proceed? We are being asked for a new license, and so I don't think it's completely out of line to ask that Fritz just agree to get that inspection.
And that is it a fire inspection, a health and safety, or what is it?
Chief?
Mayor, Council, Mr. Rennick, it's a fire inspection. So somehow Mr. Allen was authorized to go ahead and proceed with his distillery without a fire inspection. So we need to clarify just some things, logistical things, fire safety codes. My conversation with Mr. Allen today was, my impression was the state came down and inspected his distillery, but neglected to inform the fire department that it's going to be an operation. And so we're kind of in the game late, but our ultimate goal is for the safety of the employees and everyone that occupies that building, because it's a mixed occupancy. It's not just a restaurant. They have a pottery attachment. They have another retail storefront. And my concern is some of the flammable liquids that are being stored on the premises and the quantities of it. So my goal is to get with Mr. Allen and clarify some of these issues and do some research to see what state agencies that govern these distilleries clarify all of them. So he's in full compliance.
Thank you, Chief. Mayor, members of the council, I frankly do not believe you can condition the license on an inspection. There are a lot of other ways to regulate land use in terms of a business license as opposed to a wholesaler's license, in terms of a special use permit, if that's what it is. But the actual license itself is separate matter from the operation of the business. And I think that you have to decide it on the basis of what the license requirements are. Now, it sounds like Mr. Allen is perfectly agreeable to have that done, and it'd be good to get him on record tonight saying that, but I don't think you can condition the approval on it.
All right. Okay, then I think maybe what we'll do, that actually makes perfect sense. But I do think we need a statement on the record that Mr. Allen will comply with the fire inspections and with the fire department in terms of any dangerous flammable liquids, whatever might come up, and maybe nothing will. But we do need, I think, before the council is going to feel comfortable in terms of health and safety to pass on the license, to have Mr. Allen just tell us that that is what he plans to do. That is his intent.
I guess that's cueing my my voice.
It is.
So
it is.
yes, of course. I don't know of a business that doesn't have to comply with fire marshals across the entire state, and so the fire marshals can make choices depending on their feelings. Beyond code, under code, they can make a lot of. They have a lot of power, and of course, we don't have a choice but to work with the different agencies, whether it's particularly with the fire marshal, We have gone through a process. We have had review. We have had safety as a factor since the beginning. And I believe we honestly need a little more education to figure out where a danger spot might be. And I would be remiss to say I would not be a party to that.
All right, thank you. I think we all want probably the same goal, which is health and safety, make sure that we don't have dangerous conditions. Councilor Murray, you've had your hand up there.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mr. Allen, I think the big problem I have right now is if the fire inspection hasn't taken place and you're getting ready to ramp up production to sell to wholesalers, I think that fire inspection needs to be done, say, within the next 2 weeks. I would like to hear that statement made that within the next 2 weeks, you will comply with the fire inspection request by Chief Martinez.
Well, we already, excuse me if we're jumping in. We already have had a fire inspection, and I am waiting on to hear back from the fire officials on that level. But yes, so yes, it's been done.
I'm sorry, Chief Martinez, does that time frame seem reasonable to you?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you very much. Well, with those avowals that within 2 weeks, Mr. Allen will get his fire inspection completed. Let's go back to the original motion to approve, which I think has already been done, and a second. Is that correct? I think my memory is holding that long. And I will take a vote on the approval of the license at this time. Councilor Waldman?
Aye.
Councilor Murray?
Aye.
Councilor Burkett?
Aye.
Councilor Lucero?
Aye.
Councilor Knight?
Aye.
Councilor Parker?
Aye.
Well, congratulations, Fritz. Okay, so now we're going to move on to item number 2, which is the hearing of appeal of a denied building permit at 300 Mountain Shadows. I'm going to ask Lori Stout to make a presentation here. And so please, Ms. Stout.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. I don't want to be too roundabout here, but I did want to preface this appeal by noting that I've been asked by a councilor to look at how the village might allow building on the half-acre lots we inherited from Sandoval County. We have about 3 streets with half-acre lots. One of them, everyone bought 2 half-acre lots and built 1 house on an acre, but the other 2, traditionally what's happened is there've been 1 house on half-acre lots, and there's some vacant ones. So I've been asked to look at how we might just allow that, and came up with something that in our overhaul of Chapter 18 land use ordinances, we're actually getting close to the section where those proposed changes could be placed. It's 1847. So the change would be an exception to the 1 acre lot size minimum. And it would say essentially any lot approved by a county or municipality is a potentially buildable lot, provided that the village is provided proof at time of permit of the specific type of septic system required by statute for that size lot, whatever it may be. Otherwise, the normal setbacks, height, lot coverage, et cetera, would apply just like with any other lot. So the strict condition would be, because technically the lot in question here is half an acre, and that's not large enough for a traditional septic, period, by statute. So some sort of advanced treatment system would be necessary. So getting to this application, I know that our attorney here tonight, Mr. Rennick, spoke with Mr. Santiana's attorney about a potential agreement. And what they came up with, and I did touch on this in my letter, the council might consider allowing a building permit for a house on this half-acre lot with a very strict condition with regard to the septic system. And that would be that the approval of the building permit is conditional upon compliance with regulations and requirements of the state for issuance of a permit for wastewater septic for this particular size lot and the number of bedrooms being proposed. And the applicant or his contractor would have to submit to my office a copy of the application that he's submitting to the state NMED, together with a copy of any permit issued by the state. And the planning office would have the ability to review the application and the permit to ensure that they are in fact in accordance with state law, and also that we can inspect the system being installed to make sure that it is correct. Now, I would have one other, actually, it's basically two other conditions I would respectfully request. In this case, the Mr. Santianes, who wishes to build on the half-acre lot, has been charged with construction of a carport, shed, and a pump room without building permits. Our building official went and issued stop work orders, and he continued to build anyway. There's also from our code enforcement officer some charges. One count is living in an RV. The other count is requiring cleanup of bulk trash and other nuisance items, along with inoperable vehicles that are on the lot. So I would respectfully request that if the council does want to agree to issue a building permit, that first the septic and the two sets of zoning violations, all of the sets of zoning violations be cleared up first, and that we be allowed to, village be allowed to inspect the septic permit and perhaps the installation itself to make sure that the correct system goes in. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess I'm going to ask, I know that Mr. Lemke is here this evening, and his attorneys. Yes, I see you in a little box down there. Could you announce yourselves for me, please?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi, good evening. Nathaniel Lanke, representing the Santianeses, who are both here with me.
All right, thank you. I guess at this point, let me explain that if Mr. Lemke agrees to this kind of settlement agreement, then I'm going to be able to put forward a motion to the council to see if you approve that. And if you approve that, then that's the way we'll go, and we will not proceed with a quasi judicial hearing this evening on the matter because it will be resolved. If Mr. Lemke does not agree, then we will move directly into the hearing so that he can plead his case and obviously have a basis for appeal should the council uphold the permit rejection at the planning and zoning level. So first of all, I guess I have to ask, is Mr. Lemke amenable to the agreement?
Your Honor, just to clarify, I'm Mr. Lemke. I'm the attorney.
Hi, Mr. Lemke. Sorry, I've got it here that I should ask you. But yes, of course, how does your client feel about it? He's the important guy in this issue here.
Yes, Your Honor. We would be amenable to that agreement, that the building permit be granted subject to state approval of a septic system that is workable on a half-acre lot. As far as the other two zoning violations, I would request that the building permit be granted and that those other two issues be resolved separately, but assure the council that they will be resolved.
All right, thank you. I think at this point, it's probably appropriate, is it not, Mr. Rennick, for me to ask if the counselors have questions that they would like to ask at this time before I take a motion on whether or not they would approve such an agreement?
Yes, I think that would be appropriate. And I think that either through the council or just through further discussion with Mr. Lemke, exactly what he would agree to on these conditions, because there's several of them.
Yes.
He's agreed to the one here on the septic.
Of course.
But then the question is, specifically with these others, there may be room for discussion and agreement there.
All right, thank you. I'm going to call on Councilor Knight, and then I believe I saw Councilor Parker. So Councilor Knight?
Yeah, hey, Mr. Lemke and Mr. and Mrs. Centelinas. I have a question for you, Mr. Lemke. You said that they would agree to the state requirements. I think I heard Ms. Stout say that it has to be an advanced treatment system because of the lot size. Would you agree? Would they agree to that? Not just the state thing, but for the Corrales, to meet the Corrales standards, to have an advanced treatment system.
Yes, yes, the Santianes would be amenable to that as part of the.
Yes, that's, when we submitted our blueprints, that's in there already. That system's already in our prints.
All right, thank you. Mr. Parker, Council Parker?
Mayor Rowe, councilors, Ms. Stout, a question for you. Can you pull a building permit for a piece of property in the village of Corrales that has zoning violations that have not been corrected?
Typically, no, you cannot. That would be a condition of us being able to grant a permit, is that the violations are be remedied prior to.
Other questions? Counselor Lucero.
This question is for Ms. Stout. I think I just want some clarification. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes.
I think I just want some clarification on what you touched on as far as the county or municipality granting these particular lot sizes, and when was that done? And can you just clarify that for me? The 0.5 acre is striking a nerve, and I just don't understand it. So I would like to get your take on how that come about and how apt are we to abide by it.
Sure, Mayor, Councilor Lucero. So basically there's two neighborhoods that have half-acre lots, and they were platted by Sandoval County back in the 50s and 60s. And they allowed the half-acre lots, and I don't think they thought it through in terms of, you know, the fact that you have to have 0.84 acres in order to have an actual, back then, what was considered a regular septic system. Perhaps that just wasn't on anyone's mind. So back in the 50s and 60s, we had these two streets with half-acre lots that were approved by the counties prior to us becoming a village.
And if I could just follow up with that, when back through incorporation and our comprehensive plan and all that other, there was nothing that needed to be done by the, I guess the applicant to kind of basically put the village on notice that they have this lot and it is buildable and they're going to keep those allowances moving forward.
Well, ironically, what happened in one of our first zoning codes was they obviously recognized that they existed, and they said something to the effect of, you have a half-acre lot, you have to set aside another half-acre somewhere else. Well, that's not really doable. What are you going to do? Put a big sign on it saying this lot can't be developed because these guys over here built a house? That just wasn't sustainable. So that went away, and it was just replaced with you got to have a 1 acre and make it happen. It just didn't always come about over the years. We didn't always have a building official. People built without permits, just like they always do. And some people built with permits that they pulled from the state, and the state, they didn't really look at our zoning code or care. They looked at what they needed to look at. So as the village evolved, we ended up with houses on a lot of the half-acre lots for that reason.
Thank you, Ms. Stout.
Councilor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. So back in the dark ages, when I was on planning and zoning, these half-acre lots came up every now and then, and it was dependent upon the state being able to issue a septic system permit. Since these half-acre lots were created prior to incorporation of the village, we had no choice but to allow building on them. But it was dependent upon what the state would allow in terms of septic systems. So advanced treatment systems were kind of the norm when I was on planning and zoning. I don't see how you can deny a person who has a half-acre lot a building permit as long as they meet the conditions that the state imposes on them.
I think that's the general idea. Yes, I agree. I would say that before I put this motion out to you, or you follow up on a motion to maybe accept this agreement, I think I would like to clarify how the council wants to approach the violations. I think Ms. Stout's concern is that if there's not something that's pretty clear here, that the violations are going to be taken care of, and then the permit will be issued, so long as the applicant can meet the, septic requirements. I think that there is some uneasiness from our planning and zoning department and our compliance people. I'm just going to go to Councilor Waldman, and then I'll come back to you, Councilor
Okay.
Murray.
Yes,
Councilor
Lori, are the violations if part of the building structure? So if we approve the advanced treatment system, et cetera, that will be incorporated into the violations will be incorporated into the building as planned?
No, Counselor, it's separate buildings that have
Oh, separate.
already gone up that are in the setback, and it's a carport, a large shed, and a pump room. So they're separate from the building permit he's requesting also for a house.
I think back to Councilor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, my biggest concern would be to kick this back up to the Planning and Zoning Commission, because like Ms. Stout says, I think he's going to have to apply for a variance for the setbacks for the buildings he's already got. He's got to comply with those things that he's already done that's not in compliance. I think the variance is going to be one of the only options he's got, at least in my opinion, in order to take care of this. A half-acre lot, if you apply the setbacks, he wouldn't have any building pad at all, because everything would just, the setbacks would just take up a lot of his property. So I think there's going to have to be a variance of some kind that's going to go through the Planning and Zoning Commission and get their approval.
Do I have any other discussion? Because what's on the table before us, yes.
I
Councilor
didn't mean to
Rennick.
interrupt. I didn't
No,
want to
it's all right.
interrupt you, Mayor. You've got several things going on right now. There's
Right.
multiple levels to this. The building permit that is currently before you, if I understand this correctly, it's an application for a building permit to build a house, build a residence, not to build accessory structures of any kind, but just the residence. Each of those accessory structures, a carport, a shed, and so on, should have had a building permit. That's why Mr. Santana's got cited for it. But those are separate tracks from this one. I think that requiring Mr. Santana's, any applicant, to come into compliance with the code is fair, it's legitimate. But I don't think that you can condition this on successfully, for example, getting a variance. I think what you have to do is say, Mr. Santana's, these two structures were built without a permit. They require a permit, so go apply for it. And if it then determines that because of their location, they need a variance, we'll have to apply for a variance as well. He may succeed, get the permit and everything's fine. He may not succeed and either appeal it or have to remove the structure. But meanwhile, he should be allowed to go ahead with a permit for the residence if it otherwise meets all of the conditions. And the only condition we've talked about respecting the residence is the septic system. So I think you can say this is conditioned upon applying for whatever approvals are needed for the other things on the property, and perhaps for coming into compliance with inoperable vehicles, but not for necessarily saying, okay, if your shed is turned down, then this permit's turned down. I don't believe you can do that.
Okay, but we would be able to have the council make a determination if they wish to allow him to proceed with the building permit. And we would also be able to condition that on making sure that the other structures, or perhaps the excess vehicles, he'd have to comply with that, but he'd also have to have separate building permits at a different time for those other structures. Am I understanding you correctly?
Yes.
Councilor Murray.
Yeah, the only thing I would ask is, I don't know what the setback is on his house that he is planning to build. from the back wall. You know, does that meet setback requirements there?
Well, Mayor, I think that if you vote to approve this, it would, you definitely can put a condition on that this application complies with all aspects, all relevant aspects of the code. And if not, then it would have to go through whatever procedure it is, like a setback variance. And I mean, we'll leave that to Lori Stout to determine, but you're not approving a building permit for something that does not otherwise not comply.
Right. Everything would have to be in compliance with our local codes and regulations. And I think the applicant understands that most likely, but yes, Ms. Stout?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we would do our regular zoning review that we do on all building permits, and it would have to comply with what everyone else has to comply with, for sure.
Go ahead.
Lori, do I understand correctly that the permit application was not actually processed to the extent of making those determinations, but was denied because the lot wasn't big enough?
Correct. That was the reason for the denial was, you know, it's a non-conforming lot, and the way we've been interpreting that's why we're trying to change this, so that there might be a way to build on half-acre lots under certain circumstances if an actual zoning authority approved it. But yes, that was the reason. And then, oh, by the way, we have all of these violations that would prevent it from being approved anyway.
Okay, but you would need then to go back to your office with the permit, with the council's approval, and review it to see if it's within the setbacks, the height limitations, the whatever else would be applicable, would you not?
Correct.
So I would ask Mr. Lemke if he is in agreement with that.
Mr.
Yes.
Lemke?
Yes,
Yes.
I think that we're in agreement with that planning and zoning would do another review. And if the plans are approved and the building permit is granted, all of the other code violations would already have been taken care of as part of that submission process.
So, Mr. Lemke, but what we're saying is your client submitted an application for a building permit that had some plans attached, and it was denied because of the size of the lot. But I'm not certain that the building department has reviewed it for other areas of compliance, such as a setback. And I think that's what they still need to do.
I would agree with that.
Madam Mayor, I do have another comment, but I see that Councilor Parker wanted to say something on this, so I'll wait on that.
Thank you. Council Parker?
Mayor Roque, councilors, just to cut to the chase, is it possible to just make a motion that this lot, that a building permit can be applied for, and then that's the end of it? Because I don't want us approve anything on here that would then later be misconstrued as us approving this site plan as a variance in and of itself on there. And so
Understood.
Can we just make the motion to say this lot, you can apply for a building permit, and then it just goes back, and then Lori can, or Ms. Stout can do the proper review at that point? And then that also would take care of the zoning violations issues, because typically you cannot get a building permit on a lot with zoning violations occurring.
Thank you, Council Parker. I don't see why not. I'm going to now bounce it back to Councilor Rennick, our counselor, COUNSELOR, for his comment.
Councilor Parker stated it better than I did.
Okay.
Thank him.
All right.
To return to what Councilor Knight was saying, and I'd like to be clear on this because I don't want to get to a situation down the road where there's a lack of clarity and it comes back. The state has requirements for septic systems. And as an example, and they change, which is why I think you're in this situation now, from a half acre to something else. And I think that Lori can respond to this. For a ordinary septic tank and leach field, you have to have a certain, under the state rules, a certain size lot. Maybe
That's
3/4 of an acre or something like that.
That's correct. Technically, a 3-bedroom house needs 0.84 acres. That hasn't really been what's happened. But yeah, there are very, in the statute, it's very clear what you can do with this size lot. And 0.5 acres, you can't do anything with this traditional septic system. You've got to have some sort of advanced treatment system. And NMED can determine what that is. We just want to make sure that's in fact what goes in there.
So in terms of what was referred to as advanced system, that could be different types. I mean, I think of something called an aerobic system, which is advanced, but that may be old school terminology. There may be something else in the industry. But for a half-acre lot, it's whatever the state says it is, isn't it?
Correct. And we just want the ability to ensure that that is in fact what's going in there. And we would work with NMED on this particular property to make sure that they know it's half an acre and that they know, X number of bedrooms are being proposed and what do you, NMED, require as per the statute.
So Councilor Knight, is that satisfactory? Does that answer your question, or do we just change it?
No, I appreciate you reviewing that. I just wanted to make sure, again, as you said, septic systems change over the years, and that maybe something that the state is saying is okay, we need to up it because we're a small municipality and we want to make sure that our water system remains healthy. So that's why I was making sure that when I said the advanced treatment system, that's what that is, that it's an advanced treatment system, and that no matter if the state requires it or not, that Corrales is going to require it.
That's correct. If the state requires it, Corrales will, but if the state does not require it, I don't think Corrales has a separate standard that it can apply.
Yeah, that was that's what I was getting at, that, if we can have a higher standard, or, the standard that's going to be the best for Corrales residents to protect their water.
Possibly, but you would have to have that in your code,
Of course.
which
Okay.
I don't think is in there now.
No. But I'm thinking that I would like to ask the council if at this point they would be willing to entertain a motion to allow Mr. Lenke's clients to apply for a building permit that would then be reviewed to make sure it could comply with all of the requirements that we have, setbacks, 100 feet from the well, the whole, and a current septic system that would be okay for a 0.5 acre. And that would be in accordance with what Mr. Lenke said. It would also, in order to get that, it would take care of the underlying compliance violations.
With one addition to that, Mayor, I think that you need to add to that motion that the council actually reverses the denial of the permit.
Okay.
Otherwise, it leaves Mr. Santillanes without a remedy down the road because
All right.
he didn't appeal this.
All right, that's fine. And I want everybody to understand that this is in lieu of a judicial hearing, because we actually have come to an agreement with him, if you all agree to this motion. So that does reverse the decision, and it allows Mr. Lenke's clients to go ahead and apply for a building permit under the conditions that we've laid out here tonight. Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Counselor Waldman. All right, I'm going to take a voice vote on this, and we will make sure that this complies with what we think we're saying here. Counselor Waldman,
Aye.
Counselor Murray,
Aye.
Counselor Burkett,
Aye.
Counselor Lucero,
Aye.
Counselor Knight,
Aye.
Counselor Parker.
Aye.
All right, so in this particular case, Charles Rennick, I want to make sure that the motion that we put together is actually, because it is sort of a kind of a settlement agreement as well. I want to make sure that the language comports with what Mr. Lenke and you and the council believe we have done tonight. I don't want there to be any confusion because of any language issues. Would you be able to work together with Mr. Lenke to make sure that the motion complies with what we intend to do here tonight?
I think that the motion needs to be verbatim what you just stated before
Okay.
taking the vote. We do this and this and this.
Right. And I think I could probably get a read back perhaps from the clerk.
My understanding, it probably won't be verbatim, but the motion was to reverse the denial of the building permit and to remand it back to the Planning and Zoning Department for review of the building permit for its merits and its detriments.
With, I think the condition regarding septic is that the permit can be approved by administratively upon compliance with whatever the State Environment Department requirement is.
And then I think we also put in that the understanding would be, it's clear that the understanding would be that in order to comply with the building permit requirements, it would of necessity clear the underlying compliance violations.
That is my understanding. I'll have to defer to Mr. Lenke to see if that's his.
Thank you, Mr. Rennick. Mayor, councilors, I believe that is our understanding as well, that the motion as presented and approved will reverse the denial of the permit application, will allow for the Santianas to resubmit that permit under the understanding that they can be approved given their half-acre lot status, and that they will resolve all the underlying ordinance and zoning issues before that, and the state septic system requirements before everything will be approved.
Thank you. I think that sounds like we're all on the same page. So at this point, I am going to take a vote. Councilor Waldman,
Aye.
Councilor Murray,
Aye.
Councilor Burkett,
Aye.
Councilor Lucero,
Aye.
Councilor Knight,
Aye.
Councilor Parker.
Aye.
Thank you very much. And I guess they will be receiving the building permit. You'll be looking at that. And I thank everybody for joining us tonight on this matter. Thank you.
Mayor, thank you, councilors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're now going to move on to the final item on new business, which is consideration, action, and approval of the option to purchase agreement of Phelps Farmland Preservation Easement.
Madam Mayor,
Mayor,
you skipped
I
item
think we're
number
missing
3.
the budget.
Oh, shoot. I was in too much of a hurry. I'm so sorry. And who doesn't love a budget? Okay, sorry. Item 3, consideration, action, and approval of Resolution 2114, a resolution approving the preliminary budget for FY 21-22. And I believe Raina has a comment before we go to a vote on this. Raina?
Mayor, Council, from what was published that you have in your packet, there are 2 changes, I believe, on page 1 of the roll-up summary. On the expenditures, the total amount that rolled up is 5.5.
I'm sorry, Raina, you cut out, at least for me. Raina?
I think Raina was having some issues earlier. And so she prepped me just in this off case that this occurred. So I'll
All right.
speak
All right.
for her at this moment. Essentially, we took what you had proposed in terms of either cuts or increases in spending or in revenues, and we adjusted for that. So in your published packet on page 1 for the general fund summary, in fiscal year 2022, the total expenditure request is 5.6, or I'll read the full thing. It's $5,600,723. That has been amended to $5,562,026. That's to reflect changes on page 11 for the other contractual, which we had discussed, where we had a budgeted 36,000 in 2021. And you had reduced it down to 10,000. So we have reflected that. And then as well as on page 14, for the insurance, you lowered that amount to $336,000. And so, but with both of those accounts being reduced, it reduced our overall budget request for the expenditure side of things. So I can stand for any questions, and hopefully Raina might be back that can answer any others that might pop up as well.
Are there any questions for Aaron at this time regarding those issues?
Could he give that final figure again, the revised update?
Yeah, absolutely, Councilor Murray. So again, it went from $5,600,723 down to $5,562,026.
Okay, thank you.
Any more discussion? All right, I would like to have a motion to approve the preliminary budget for FY 21-22. Do I have such a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilor Lucero. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Waldman and Councilor Knight. It was a tie. I'm going to take a voice vote. Councilor Waldman,
Aye.
Councilor Murray,
Aye.
Councilor Burkett,
Aye.
Councilor Lucero,
Aye.
Councilor Knight,
Aye.
Councilor Parker.
Aye.
Thank you for that. And thank you for all the hard work that everybody put in our budget. Now we're going to get to item number 4, which is consideration, action, and approval of the option to purchase agreement of Phelps Farmland Preservation Easement. I know we had discussion and answers for questions at last meeting. And so are there any further questions regarding this? And I think you understand that at this point, we're just doing an approval of the option to purchase agreement. And of course, that's going to be contingent on the appraisal coming in where we suspect it will. So yes, Councilor Waldman.
Yeah, I had a question on the option to purchase agreement on the second page in section 4, about line 4, where it says if valuation of the easement exceeds the floor price, buyer agrees to pay seller the floor price plus any amount that exceeds the floor price. And I'm wondering if there is any ceiling on that.
I'm going to defer to Attorney Rennick. I think this was what was done before. I'm not sure of the answer to that question.
Okay.
Is
Mayor,
anybody in the administration have a ready answer for that? We do not have Michael Cisco with us here tonight. I do know Randy Audio definitely reviewed this and helped to write it. So, but I don't know the answer to the question.
Okay.
Mayor, I'm sorry, I did not hear the specific clause in here that Councilor's referring to.
Yeah,
Go
it's.
ahead, Council
basically-
Waldman.
Yes, I'm sorry. Basically says that there's a floor price, assuming approximately $750,000. If the appraisal comes in at above the floor price, it doesn't seem like there's any ceiling. It says if it exceeds the floor price, buyer shall provide, the buyer agrees to pay the seller the floor price plus any amount that exceeds the floor price.
Council, I'm sorry, I'm just not hearing you very well. Can you refer me to a page number?
Yes, it's under the section of option to purchase agreement. It's the second page. And
Okay.
it's section 4, purchase terms.
Give me just a second here. Okay, page 2.
Yes.
And which
And-
section?
Under section 4, purchase terms.
Okay.
And it's the end of the 4th line. Evaluation of the easement exceeds the floor price. Buyer agrees to pay seller the floor price plus any amount that exceeds the floor price.
All right, what is your question
The
about
question
that?
is, there appears to be no ceiling on that. In other words,
So-
if the appraisal, there's no upper limit as to how much could be paid under this option to purchase. If the appraisal comes in substantially higher than the floor price.
Well, it's a good question, and I appreciate what you're saying. It does appear that there's no upper limit, but I'm reluctant to possibly be contradicting something that Randy may have already reviewed here on this.
Right.
So I'm not sure how to answer that, except that it does appear to me that there's no upper limit and that might be a concern.
My understanding of this is that this is sort of the same thing that happened with the Haslam, and that there have been, they feel they're close enough to appraisals that it wouldn't exceed it by much. But I do have right now, and my little fingers were flying, and I've got a question out to Michael Cisco if he could join us and answer that question for us, because I believe it came up before, and it did not turn out to be a concern there. And I know we've talked about it quite a bit because we're trying to make sure we've got enough money to do both
Right.
agreements.
That was
So,
that was my concern at the beginning.
yeah. And so, you know, honestly, I don't know whether that would be the kind of thing that we wouldn't have to go through with the option if the appraisal was just like through the moon. But I honestly don't want to mislead anybody. So I don't know the answer to the question. And clearly Mr. Rennick is not clear on that either.
Well, Mayor, as you indicated there, it sounds like they're pretty close on a dollar figure. So that's fine. I just wanted to raise it, and you know, I know this
Well,
is not the
and
last time.
it is concerning. I agree with that. And, but I think the appraisals are gonna come in that way, but I don't know. I mean, honestly, if the council is concerned enough about it, we may need to, I really hate to delay, but we may need to. Councilor Burkett?
Since this is an option, it doesn't provide me a ton of concern, because if it does come in at a dramatically higher number, we're in no way committed to follow through with this. We can say, no, that's above what we're comfortable with at that point in time, and not slow the process down, and still have the ability to exit if things come out dramatically different than how we expect them to.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, that's great.
Any other, I think I see Councilor Parker. Oh, Ron?
No, I was just going to say, Mayor, that the emails that I saw from Michael and from Randy, we will have enough money based upon the calculations that Michael did, and the review, as Charles has mentioned, it has been seen by Randy. So I feel confident of what we've got there, and going to Councilor Burkett's point, we're under no obligation if it goes higher.
Okay.
But I think we're well within the range.
Okay, Councilor Parker?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Oh,
Madam Mayor, if I can
yes,
just butt
village
in.
clerk, he has
um,
an answer.
I was able to get a hold of Michael Cisco. The way that this agreement reads, and it is the exact same language that was used for the Haslam easement, is that we pay whatever the valuation is. So in this case, where we have a $750,000 floor price, if it comes in higher, we are obligated to pay whatever the valuation comes in at. So and just to be extreme, if it came in at an extra 250,000 and made it an even million, we would be obligated to pay that full million on this agreement.
And that's exactly what we did before with the Haslam.
Correct. And so, we were fortunate in the Haslam that it basically came in exactly at the estimated floor price. And so there was no additional funds needed. The second half of this sort of clause for the purchase terms in the purchase price, it's only if the valuation, say, came in at a 500,000, then there's an option. Basically, the seller has to, or I'm sorry, we as the buyer would have to provide notice to the seller that we are unable to pay the floor price because the valuation came in lower. And that's where we would either re-enter some sort of negotiation with the sellers, or they would accept the fact that the valuation came in lower, and we would both exercise the option.
I do want to say that I've been texting with Michael at this point, and he does point out that it's exactly the same as Haslam. And he did say we really don't expect the appraisal to be a whole lot higher. So that's just, and he's been working pretty hard at trying to find equivalent values for these appraisals. But
So Michael make up the difference?
yes, he will be personally putting that in. I mean, this is, these deals are not without complications, because, we're trying to protect ourselves by doing this part and then having an appraiser later. But there is language in there that we would accept the risk of a higher appraisal. Councilor Burkett.
I think the end of section 3, the last sentence, clearly states that we can opt out of this if we're not happy with the numbers. The buyer's election to exercise this option shall be in the buyer's sole discretion. It seems pretty clear to me that there's an out here, that once we get further down this process, that we have the option to either opt in or out based on further information. But right now we are committing to this process with a floor that protects the seller.
Right.
But I think we're protected as well. Now, I highly doubt we're going to need that protection, but I don't think it's not there.
Okay. Mr. Rennick, does this sound like we can go ahead and proceed at this point with a vote?
I appreciate what Counselor, I think it was Burkett who just said that. I'm sorry, I had the agreement up and didn't see it. And looking at section 3, it does appear that what you're doing is signing this agreement, which then allows you to exercise the option farther down the road, and that you could decline to exercise it. Is that what you're saying, Councilor Burkett?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a little risky for me to say this without really studying this, but that sounds correct.
And you will be paying the difference should we actually be obligated, correct? Joking. It's okay.
As long as I go out there with my binoculars and watch the birds.
That's right. That's right.
With a beer from the brewery across the street.
Right. Okay. Well, I think with that understanding, I think the response last time was quite positive to this farmland easement. And I don't, so I think if there's no further discussion, I believe there is. Councilor Knight.
I just want to bring this up. I thought I heard the last meeting that we couldn't pay over the appraisal price.
We can't.
We can. Okay, that's.
No, no, we can't. The issue here is if the appraisal comes in higher. But we couldn't, let's say that they said, we'd like $3 million for this property, but the appraised value is 2. We can't pay 3. As a municipality, we can only pay appraised value.
Okay, got it.
So this just has to do with if the appraised value comes in a lot higher than the floor, right? Floor price that's been
Right.
set by the buyer to protect himself.
Okay. Okay.
I would, if there's no further discussion or questions, I would accept a motion to go ahead and approve the option to purchase agreement for this Phelps farmland preservation easement.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilor Waldman. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Burkett. All right. Councilor Waldman,
Aye.
Councilor Murray,
Aye.
Councilor Burkett,
Aye.
Councilor Lucero,
Aye.
Councilor Knight,
Aye.
Councilor Parker.
Aye.
All right, thank you. We are moving ahead then with the option to purchase agreement. And we have now concluded the new business items. So I know that we are going to have something about the local government investment pool funds on the agenda for the next meeting. What else? Aaron, do you already know that we are going to be looking at?
Actually, Madam Mayor, really all I have is, and it sort of ties into a point I forgot to make earlier. We'll have our final budget approval coming up. Just a reminder for council, it will be different. We have to have, you know, the preliminary budget has to be a pretty good reflection of what we're going to do, but obviously we can do some minor tweaks in between now and the final budget. We'll make sure that any of those tweaks are very plain and clear. And then really after that, obviously we have a bit more to do with this option to purchase agreement, coming in with an appraisal and seeing that at a later date. But the rest of it should be, I don't have, unlike previous meetings, I don't have a whole lot to add.
Councilors, do any of you want to put a particular item? Yes, Councilor Burkett.
I'm just curious the status on fencing ordinance, if that's going to be available to discuss in June, or if we're looking at July before that's available.
I don't know if Lori has now faded away. She actually had a pinched nerve tonight, so she may have felt her time was over. But Ron, will you go ahead and make sure, check on the status of when that would be available?
Sure.
We do understand that you're quite concerned and we want to make sure it comes to you as soon as practicable. Councilor Waldman?
Yes, I'd like to see if we can get some kind of decision on the request by the Interior Drain Committee on the $25,000 that they requested for the study.
Okay, we can look at that. I will say there are quite a few regulatory hoops that we need to clear. So, but we will definitely look at that.
Thank you.
Councilor Lucero.
I think in conjunction with what Mr. Curry touched on in his administrative report, whether this council is in favor of purchasing property, I think it might be a good time to start discussing, maybe exploring moving forward on the Gonzalez property, if that's something that this council would like to do. I think it's fair to put it for discussion, if nothing further.
Okay, got it.
Thank you.
Anybody else have an item that they at this time would like to put on the agenda? All right, and just in a matter of timing, because I wanted to make it clear that, you know, we take a deep breath tonight and tomorrow, and then really very early next week, Aaron starts to build that agenda, and we generally talk to our attorneys and make sure that everything's appropriate. So if you do think of something that you would like to put on the agenda, you know, sooner rather than later is always a good idea before it gets really impacted. And you are absolutely, of course, entitled to put things on the agenda. But if it gets too crowded, then we just don't have the time to give everybody every item it's due. So I appreciate your understanding that the clerk has a lot to put together to get these agendas out. So I appreciate your patience on that. Yes, Counselor Murray.
So we'll be meeting in person in June.
Yes, we will be meeting in person because we don't have any legal notices to throw us off. And we will be having, of course, in person with whatever state health requirements we need to do. And then we're also going to still have some kind of YouTube presence so that the public can call in. And I think it's a good point too, that we will, I think it's relevant and important that we reach out to you counselors when we've got some ideas as to how we're going to make sure that the public input is appropriate and that we don't, you know, wind up with a backroom rolling quorum in the chat room, right? We've been pretty good so far at not violating open meetings. We don't want to do it now. So, well, I really appreciate the effort everybody put in tonight, and I certainly would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, second, anybody? All right, how about it? Is everybody ready to be out of here? Signify by waving your hands. All right. Thank you, everybody. We will see you on June 15th. Thank you.